going at it. Give me your assessment of yesterday.
Sure. So first, let me comment on that Justice Gorsuch exchange. One thing to understand is that the lawyer that you're hearing, try to grapple with Gorsuch's penetrating questions is a former law clerk of his on the 10th Circuit. So Gorsuch, did not give him any slack. And I think actually he was probably pretty disappointed in his former law clerk in terms of those answers. And look, what Gorsuch is getting at, based on a question that Alito asked, is that you could have a gap in the presidency, right? Someone gets elected president, they're in the chair, and some lower official says, hey, he's not the real president because he was disqualified under Section 3. I can take that unto myself because he was disqualified immediately from the time he purportedly engaged in an insurrection, and therefore I don't have to obey his orders. You just raised the issue of the nuclear chain of command. What happens to the nuclear chain of command? This is an intolerable situation, Steve. That's what Gorsuch was getting at. Like, your theory makes no sense because its outcome would, lead to things that make no sense. You have to have a situation in which there is an unbroken chain from president to president so that you always know who's in charge of the executive branch. And my overall assessment, Steve, of yesterday is that, look, it was like a wrestling cage match where you got Jonathan Mitchell, who did a great job for President Trump, in there. And then you have a tag team against him, a lawyer, the one you heard there in the Gorsuch clip, and then a female lawyer for the Secretary of State in Colorado. And the tag team could not defeat Jonathan Mitchell. He mopped the floor with him, Steve.
What is your overall assessment? They're being criticized, and MSNBC is going nuts that they didn't really deal with, which is what they want. Trump is an insurrectionist. They're going nuts last night and this morning. The after action report, people should understand the hot takes. They were stunned. Neil Katyal, Weissman, they were stunned right after it was over because of what a beatdown it was. But then as they regrouped later in the evening and then today, they're saying they just worried about the politics of it and the implementation of it. They didn't get to the fact that that Trump is an insurrectionist and therefore cannot hold the office. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, that's the issue they want, Steve, and that's why the trial judge in Colorado basically said, on page 100 or so out of 103 pages, that Trump was not holding an office that was disqualified because he wasn't on the list of disqualified offices. It starts with senator, goes to representative, and then there's a hierarchy on down. But then, the vast majority of our opinion before that is that Trump was an insurrectionist, right? I think that actually may have been exactly where Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was going yesterday. She was basically seeming to attach herself to the theory that Bill McGinley just mentioned, which is that Trump is not on the list of disqualified offices in terms of running for the presidency again. But I think what she may try to do is replicate what the trial judge in Colorado did, which is to say that Trump engaged in an insurrection. But I'm sorry, for whatever reason, the framers of the 14th Amendment decided not to put the president on the list. My hands are tied. But I did not see the other justices going in that direction, right? Let's just give me one. I'll give you one example of Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, he asked the very straight up question of, how can you say that President Trump engaged in an insurrection? He wasn't tried for it. He's not been convicted of it, right? So I don't think that the other 8 justices, or other 7 at least, put Justice Sotomayor in her own category, that they're going to go for some opinion that goes on at length about insurrection issues when they have some kill shot or other to get rid of this case. And it's actually a situation, Steve, where it's an abundance of riches. It's an embarrassment of riches, really. There are so many ways for this case to be thrown out and for the Colorado Supreme Court to be rejected. It's hard to say exactly which one they're going to pick. There were 2 that Jonathan Mitchell focused on yesterday that I did not see any real response from the other side. 2. One is that there's a case called term limits where the Supreme Court said, Justice Kennedy writing, that the Constitution sets the qualifications for office, and the states cannot vary those. And that's what's happening here. Colorado is varying the requirements for election because the 14th Amendment doesn't tell you what you need to do to run. It only says that if you meet the criteria, and I don't think President Trump here meets those criteria, but even if you grant for sake of argument that he does, that then he cannot hold office. And so Jonathan Mitchell argued, look, you have to sort of let the election play out. If President Trump gets elected, then Congress would get a chance to decide whether to lift that purported disqualification. And none of that's ripe right now. And so Colorado is varying the constitutional requirements of office for the presidency, and it can't do that. And then, the other things that he were arguing we've talked about before, like this is something, under Griffin's case where right after in the Reconstruction period, former Chief Justice Salmon declared that the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not self-executing. You need a statute. Indeed, Congress enacted such a statute in 1870. What's left of it is a criminal provision for engaging in insurrection against the United States. But as Justice Kavanaugh pointed out, President Trump has not been indicted or convicted of that. So however you look at it, this case is all wet.